welcome to episode 13 of the Joint Operations Podcast. I'm your host, Brady J. Sadler. The J is silent. It stands for Wandingo. And with me,
Adam. Welcome to 2025.
I forgot the year changed. It's been so long.
Happy New Year.
It's been a year.
It's only about a month and over a month since our last episode.
We haven't released a podcast episode in a year, dude.
This whole year. This is the first episode for the year.
And this episode is called Arydia.
Well,
it's called.
That's trademarked, I think.
We always use trademarks for episode titles. Anyway,
something fantasy.
Yeah,
our fantasy.
Yeah, our ORU
living the fantasy.
We'll figure out something.
Fantasy life
post recording. So how's everyone been? How's everyone been recovering from this amazing transition into 2025?
I mean, it's good to have a job, I guess, but other than that, game wise, it's been great. Have too many games to play, which is a nice change of pace. Like I think we went for a couple months where it's like, oh, nothing to play. I feel like playing something, but nothing to play.
Played plenty of video games, but nothing really on the table.
Even that, like, until we found Raven's Watch recently, there's still like kind of a drought because we finished up the Diablo season. I guess we were playing some other stuff. We probably go back and listen to these episodes, and I'm sure we talked about things we were playing.
Yeah, the other because we'll talk about games this entire episode. So I guess like things that I've been doing outside of gaming. I finished a book. I wrote my 5th novel, which was my goal for December. So I wrote, I think it was 2,500 words a day. I think it was. So I was trying to get to 100,000 words in a month, but I blew past that, and like I've officially written my longest novel. And it's not completely done because I'm going through the editing process. But Relic Myers and the Harmony of Hexes, which is the second book in the series, is in rewrites right now.
I don't know if you guys heard the cat meowing.
He wants pet. And I'll be sending it off to editing next week. So I'm doing my final pass right now. I got some beta readers on it. It is like 126,000 words, which is just a little bit longer than the Withered Roots. Didn't plan for it being that long, but it was.
Yeah, I always hate when Brady finishes a book because then it's like, here's a beta copy. Read it. Do some work for me.
It's not work. First off, it's not like a beta copy in the sense that it's going to change. Like the story's the same. I'm just fixing some grammatical stuff, and
yeah, but I don't want to give feedback. That's the thing. It's
not feedback.
I know, it's why I hate playtesting though. It's like I like to play a game, but I don't want to tell you what
it is. That's what it is. It's just
I know.
It's all it is like, hey, you made this chapter a little too gay or something.
But also, like I just I might take a while to read it, and it's like I don't want to. Oh, you finished reading the book yet? What do you think? I don't know. It's too much pressure.
Which, whatever. I got beta readers for that. And I did, last week, or no, just yesterday, actually, the Friday, because today is Saturday. Spoiler alert, we're not recording on a Tuesday when this comes out, but I got a message from one of my UK beta readers who said that they're 100 pages in and they're enjoying it more than the first book, which they loved. So that's a good sign. So I'm pretty positive it's going to do well. But what I'm not positive on is next week is the last week of January, and I've said that in February I'm starting my 6th book, which I think is going to be a shorter one. It's going to be a novelette in the Malice of Light world because we and you are going to be designing a game next month too. We and you, because we mentioned this before, I think, but we started a sort of adventure RPG miniature skirmish game with one of our buddies, Jordan Heckman. He is the designer of County Road Z, which is one of my favorite zombie skirmish games. But we're tinkering around with this system that he's given us. Like we met together, we kind of went over ideas, and then he put a draft together of what.
I think we pitched a concept and he ran with it.
And he's given us like a kind of an outline of a draft of the book. So we're gonna go dig into that next month while I'm writing the next Malice of Light kind of side story. It's not the actual next volume in the Malice of Light. It's kind of a novelette, which is like 20,000 words, so it should be pretty short. But that'll get me in the mood again to work on fantasy. Whoops, I banged the table. Don't ever do that when you're recording podcasts. So yeah, that was my main. Oh, and I also lost 35 pounds. Or 30 pounds because I gained 5 back apparently. I can't tell.
Yeah, I found some of those. I think I was like, after the holidays, I was kind of trying to take a break on eating out and stuff. I gotta lose some weight, and that didn't last very long. I lost some weight, but then I started eating like crazy again. So I blame the new office schedule. Like I thought it'd be good going to an office with my new job. I have to go to the office like a few days a week, which might sound like no big deal for most people, but it's miserable for me. I've been working remote for like a decade, and so it's a big culture shock for me to go into an office again. But they have like healthy food there, and so like they have protein bars and stuff. So I can eat protein bars.
When you
for
say
lunch.
protein bars, you mean like Cliff bars or
No, like Kirkland, like they're actual protein bars. So I have those for lunch, but they so many times like people bring in food, like, oh, I brought in croissants for everybody, or oh, we're catering lunch today. So there's always food.
It's pronounced croissants.
Croissants. A croissant full. But there's always extra food there that you end up eating. And I work for a company that does the Boy Scout popcorn stuff, so they have all kinds of s'mores or caramel, salted caramel popcorn. And so it's like, oh, here, take a bag of popcorn. Oh.
Do they have white cheddar popcorn or cheddar popcorn?
I don't know. Maybe. I keep seeing the salted caramel and the s'mores that they put out. And
this is off topic, but you remember like in the grocery store, I don't know if they still carry this, but I remember like in the popcorn aisle, we'd go shopping like when we were living alone, early, moving out on our own. And there was like popcorn that came with like cheese sauce. That like you poured the cheese sauce over the popcorn, and I'm like, how does that even work? Do you eat it with a spoon or something? Or
I think you're dreaming.
I thought we were joking about it. Maybe it was like Justin or Mitchell. I forgot. But like we were walking through, and I just see all these different types of popcorn. I see one that comes with a bag of cheese sauce. I'm like, what is this? How do you even
shake it up? Put it in the bag and shake it up.
I guess I don't know. Like I
do remember the Okie Dokie cheddar cheese popcorn I used to buy all the time. That would like make your hands all orange.
Yeah.
That stuff was. I ate like a whole bag of that stuff with a 20-ounce Sprite. And no wonder I was overweight as a kid.
Yeah, when I'm trying to write in the 90s, I think back when we were in high school, like getting vending machine snacks all the time, like, man, I never ate any real food. I just kept eating like all these junk packets and stuff. America. So yeah, that's the banter. Let's talk about. We usually do board games first, right? Tabletop games, because I think that's going to take the entire episode. So
probably.
Before we get into it, though. Because the main course, the tout le monde, what do you call that?
Piece de la Resistance
is Arydia. I think it's called Arydia: The Paths We Dare Tread, which is a Kickstarter. Adam and I both backed. Adam backed it late because he didn't follow my.
You want to know the one reason why I didn't back it originally is because I saw the Path of Light example, and one of the skills was cooking, and I was like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I didn't like it either. And I want to know. I know the designer of Cody Miller. He's worked at the company as Far Off Games. I know you're listening, Cody. On the Kickstarter, I commented directly on that, saying like, I figured the cooking skill would be a good halfling skill or something like that. Or like I asked, can you cross those skills like different paths? Because I thought it weird that it was limited to light. And one like either him or somebody for the company responded saying that like, oh, it's still in development. So I wonder if someone's like, oh, maybe we should make that into a halfling skill, because they did. They made the chef skill now.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember being interested in it. I was like, oh, if Brady's back in it, I'll be able to play it. But then the more I looked at it, I think you sent me a video or like an update, and you said this is looking way better than I thought. And this is after the Kickstarter ended. I was like, oh dang! So I went to the Game Found and I late backed it because I was like, I might as well have it, because it looked cool.
Yeah, I forget if they were just showing off like cards or something, because like the cards are just beautiful. Like I love the graphic design and just the overall.
I think it was going through the paths. Like it was just, and I saw that the Path of Light was like, oh, that's a cleric, and it was pretty cool. And I also think I was more in a fantasy mood at that time, so I was like, oh, I want something like this, because wasn't that around the time we were playing Shadows of Brimstone?
Maybe it could have been, yeah.
But we had a Shadows of Brimstone campaign going a couple years, like a year ago, I think it was, with our wives, and the entire time I was like, yeah, it was fun. We played through a lot of it, but it wasn't really. Shadows of Brimstone's not really structured around a story. It's kind of like just play a bunch of random dungeons, and it's also extremely tedious to like store and set up and everything. It's very component heavy. But we were playing that, and I was like, man, I'm in the mood for something fantasy related. So it's like, hopefully this Arydia game comes soon, so we can kind of transition into that. But it took way longer, like a year longer than we thought, which kind of sucked. But
yeah, which we'll get into Arydia. I want to do like a deep dive on that. But before we do, I want to mention a couple things, because I think we haven't talked about. I think our last episode came out when I ordered the Rattlings. I don't think I actually got the Rattlings for Kill Team when they got here. So like, that's probably why we haven't been doing episodes, because like between writing a novel, working out every morning now, and trying to lose a bunch of weight, and Adam's going to the office, and we're playing Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. On top of all that, I was like speed painting all my Rattlings and my Ogrins for my Rattling Kill Team, which we only got to play one game when I had my Rattlings assembled, and I fell in love with the team. I lost. I didn't lose miserably, but I lost pretty bad.
Well, that was the first time I got to play as the cops too, the Exaction Squad, which I really like them.
Yeah, so I am I was completely blown away by how perfect the Routlings came out. Like the models are amazing. I love all the rules. I love all the unit, all the soldiers and everything. Like, what do they call them? What do they call the actual individual characters? They're called operatives, right?
Yeah,
operatives. Yeah. So all the operatives, it just, and the flavor text in the book, that like everything was so perfect. So I've been kind of like in awe of that, and it's weird how we haven't dove in and played more, but we've had a lot of distractions lately. So I'm hoping we get to like actually play now. So I have a fully painted Rattling team. Dreams come true, man. Dreams do come true.
I was kind of waiting. I was hoping by the time you had the Rattlings painted, I'd have the terrain painted. But I blew through the little bits and pieces, but I got to the big structures, and all of a sudden I lost steam. And I also was going through that back issue. Like my shoulders were killing me before I got that massage. Had a couple massages since our last episode.
It's pronounced massage.
Massage. And it feels better now. So I could actually probably paint. I might do some painting today. But it's so distracting with all these games to play that I just can't find time to paint.
I mean, that's my next point too, is like I was going to talk about another game I just got, but the problem being is like Arydia is always set up on my table because my daughter and I are playing through a campaign. She keeps stopping like mid-encounter, so I can't pack it away. So like we're in the middle of a fight, so I can't put the game away. But I'm really enjoying this other game I've been digging into. There's two games that came in before Arydia showed up. So I got the Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era, which is by Chip Theory Games. Amazing production, beautiful game, super fun, really short campaigns where you just play 3 sessions and that's a whole campaign. You just have like 2 regular games and you have like an end game dungeon. So really cool little product. Not little, it's big and it's beautifully produced, but very glad I backed it. Looking forward to more content for that. And then I got this other one that I forgot I backed actually, which was the Tiny Epic Game of Thrones, because I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, obviously. This game was different though because I think it's the first cooperative and solo Game of Thrones themed game, because it's funny, I used to always push for someone should make like a cooperative Game of Thrones game, and I think at one time Eric Lang's design for FFG, I think that was co-op or
the adventure game,
which I still can't believe that didn't get made. That was like such a cool concept, and like it seemed like so put together, but it never saw the light of day. They were playtesting it at a Gen Con one year. But anyway, Tiny Epic. I've been a big Tiny Epic fan. Like I have like a lot of the titles. I don't play them a ton, but I love like Tiny Epic Defenders and Tiny Epic Zombies. Those are great. I always love how they let you play competitively or cooperatively or solo. They have all the different game modes. But the Game of Thrones one came in, and wasn't thinking much of it because I kind of forgot that I backed it. But it is really cool. It's got really cool solo mechanics, really cool cooperative gameplay with the Night King expansion, where like the Night King's invading Westeros, and you got to like unite all the houses together and fight against the what are they called? The White Walkers. Super cool little game, but I haven't got to explore it enough because Arydia is always on the table, which maybe we should talk about Arydia then, because it's dominating.
It's kind of ironic, speaking of Arydia, is because we were, like, I think on this episode talking about how excited we were for that Lands of Evershade game that we backed, which I'm looking forward to that as well. But it kind of, like, kind of took over my hype for Arydia, and I was like, Arydia was coming. I was like, oh, cool, that'll kind of tide me over till Lands of Evershade comes out. But when I honestly did not expect Arydia to, like, hit me as hard as it did. I can confidently say it's probably the best I said this online, like, it's the best tabletop experience I've ever had that I can remember. Like, the one thing I can compare it to is when we first played Hero Quest when we were kids and kind of like learned what hobby games were,
learned what Magic was.
Yeah, so like, but even that, like, this blows that away. Like, that was kind of just an introduction. This is kind of like deep diving into what a fantasy board game can be and should be. People always praise Gloomhaven, and again, this blows Gloomhaven away. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't even compare that.
We shouldn't say that this is like objective statements where it's like these are like objectively better. It's more just like for us, for our tastes and what we want out of it. It's like this is like beyond anything we could hope for any other game that's been out there. And just kind of take a step back, just to anybody who's not aware, Arydia, which is ArYdia, it's like the name of the fantasy land, Arydia. The paths we dare tread, because in the game all the classes, quote unquote, are paths. So you have path of light, path of shadow, and this is like a traditional like D&D adventure style fantasy game, very traditional high fantasy, 1 to 4 players, big campaign game. So this is like I think when we backed it was like $100 something for backing it, but it's like $250 in retail. It's just a huge, beautiful production. The box is enormous, but everything is so well done. It's so well made.
It's also what they consider a green legacy game. So there's like hidden stuff in boxes or packages or whatever that you reveal during the course of a campaign, but it's all designed to be reset. So like after you're done with the campaign, you can go back and reset the game to its original state, which is awesome. Like that's really cool.
So like in other legacy games, you might have cards that say tear this card up, it's out of the game. This just has a divider in the card boxes where you just put it in the back, so you can set it aside for if you want to reset the game later. It's called
banished.
Yeah, when you banish it. And it's cool too because, and this is not really spoilery because we're not going to get specific, but like some cards will have multiple versions. So like the cards kind of evolve. So it'll say, oh, this card A turns into card B or card C. So there might be like several iterations of a single card or a single character. And depending on the choices you make, like the other versions become the active versions.
Yeah. For example, like if you run across an NPC and he's like, oh, I need some help with something. If you go do what he wants help with, you come back to talk to him, and then the card will transform into a different card, and he'll have different conversations on him, like reflecting that you just helped him, and kind of continuing the story, which is a cool way of handling it.
Yeah, and we'll jump around topics here a lot because, like, for example, what you just brought up there is a point that I thought maybe wouldn't work for me, because I remember the Kickstarter was talking like, oh, it's like this social dynamic where like you kind of role play in the game, and I'm always kind of like skeptical, like, okay, whatever, role playing games are their own thing. Like I don't need to like role play in my board games, even though sometimes you do for fun. But this does it in a way where it's like very, very unique, very engaging. Like my daughter's obsessed with it because I think she's always had this like love for D&D, but doesn't really know how to like kind of do that herself, like get into it herself. She's played D&D campaigns with me, but I'm always guiding it. But in this, like each NPC character has this card, and it has a little short description of who this person is, what kind of like maybe a physical quirk they might have, like they're rubbing their hands together or they're like smoothing their mustache, and kind of like tells you how their demeanor is, if they're like angry or if they're fidgety or whatever. And then it'll have like little short bits of dialogue, but within the dialogue, certain words are bolded. So it's trying to make the player who's role playing that character emphasize those words or those phrases. That way, whoever is listening, whoever's interacting with the NPC, the active player can ask more about those details and push the conversation forward. Now, you don't have to do that; it's not necessary, but like it's just a natural, organic thing that people tend. We played two different groups, and both groups tend to do that just naturally because it's kind of a fun little social aspect.
Yeah. For example, you might come across an NPC who says, "Oh, hi, how are you doing? You might, can you give me some help? I've got some rats causing problems in my basement." And like, you emphasize those words. You go, "Oh, what about these rats?" And then you look at the back of the card, and it has an entry for rats, and you can kind of expand the conversation, and eventually get to a point in the conversation where you see a little icon, what they call a role play point. And so the person that's actually reading the card gets a role play point, which is actually like a resource you can spend in the game to get a bonus to a skill check, things like that. And it also encourages you to pass around, because in the game, it's like the person to the left of the active player is the guide who's reading the card. And so it encourages you to kind of trade off who's reading cards. That way everybody can kind of get, you can get resource points scattered around the party. It's a cool way of doing it.
Yeah, there are a lot of RPGs that have done that thing where it's like inspiration points or role-playing points, and like this has like kind of a mechanical thing baked into it, but it still doesn't feel too gimmicky. Like it just feels very organic and very cool.
I think we should just trade off points that we like or want to emphasize about the game. And you were just talking about the storytelling one, right? Like,
well, the role playing.
I'm gonna talk about something I think is really cool, and that is the way that the classes work. Because this is one thing that I was concerned about, but because they use this term called path of light, path of shadow, path of valor. These kind of define general classes. Like, for example, the path of light is a cleric, the path of shadow is a rogue. And I was always like, why don't you just you call them the class? But the way it's designed is like it's kind of like showing you your evolution of that class. So like you start off as an apprentice or a scrub. I think what's the fighter, for example, like he starts off as a brigand or a...
I haven't played as the Path of Shadow starts off as a scamp.
Yeah, so scamp. So it's, and you kind of evolve as you play. But when you start the game, you're making your character. There's a lot of steps about it. You pick your character, which is like your race. You pick your path. And then you kind of every path has like a tuck box of components, but also like a slipcase of punch board. What do you call those like triple layer punch board, like
they're
player
like
boards?
Inset, right? Double layer or triple layer?
Some are triple layer. Yeah. But you have like an inventory panel. You have a skill tree punch board sheet, and then you have a
it's like your level, your character sheet essentially. Cause it's
your character sheet, and then your inventory, and then your skill sheet. But the back of the slipcase is when you're making a character, it has a whole setup of how to set up that class. So everybody picks a class, and you pass out those slipcases to everybody, and they can follow their own setup directions on the back of that to set their character up. And
Yeah, if anybody's played the board game Root, the animal war game, it kind of reminds me of that, because in Root you have a faction board, you flip it over, it has like a special setup for that faction. It kind of makes you feel a little more unique when you're setting up for your path.
Yeah, and I always play healers in fantasy games. It's my thing. I'm always playing a cleric or a paladin. That's all I want to play. And I have to give a shout out to Cody or whoever else was involved in the design of the classes in the game, because the Path of Light is awesome. Like as I'm playing it, everything about it is exciting to me. You start off like a little pouch of bandages that you can use to heal people, and so you really can do a little bit of healing, but then you can start learning new like healing abilities and stuff and do some massive healing. But you also you have a staff, and you hit people pretty hard. You can cast spells, light spells to damage enemies. It's just really everything that I want in a cleric, and it's just like it's rare for me to be so happy with how well a class is done in a fantasy game. And I just want to call that out, that like if you like classes and stuff, you'll probably find a class in this game that you identify with and can get excited about.
Yeah, and to emphasize that point, I think Adams can vouch for this. I'm extremely picky with how like either my favorite type of characters, like lineages or races, like how they're handled, and then how classes are handled, because I'm very picky. Like for example, if I'm playing a ranger, I want to be able to like use knives and use daggers, not just bows. And like if I'm playing a game with fantasy, I don't want to like be limited where I can't use a dagger effectively. I want to be able to use short blades and not just like have to use a sword. But it's almost like a gripe in this game, because both my two favorite classes, which are always ranger and rogue, the Path of Wandering and Path of Shadow, are both like insanely geared toward my styles, like my play styles. Like the ranger is both like, he has a bow, but they also have a bow and a knife, a hunting knife, and a lot of their abilities are tied to like using a hunting knife, and I'm like, yes, it's awesome. And then the Path of Shadow not only has a dagger, but it also has traps, and I love traps with rogues. So it's like everything I could possibly want they did correctly, and it's almost like it was designed for me in that regard, because I feel like I'm pretty specific with my wants. And then also the halflings look amazing, and there's like halflings everywhere you talk to in the game. It's kind of spoilery, I guess, but like every NPC is a freaking halfling in this world. Makes me wonder if Arydia is like the halfling land, and you go venture out to other places. And
one other thing I'll mention about the classes that I like is that each class, in addition to all the components I mentioned earlier, you also have a little treasure box, like a little punch board, or like not punch board, but it's cardstock, like folded up treasure
like a
box,
yeah,
that has tokens in it that are like equipment specific to your class. And so every now and then you'll come across like a path treasure chest, and every player can draw one of their items from their chest that's specific to them. So you're always going to get like a better version of something for your class, and that's pretty exciting too. Where during campaign, getting new class specific items is pretty cool.
It's always something you can use, because you don't have to worry about like, oh, I can't use that thing, so this treasure is not really geared to me.
There is also pathless items, but honestly, they're not as exciting as stuff that's tailored for your class. So,
yeah.
So the classes in the game is a big bonus for me. Like a big thumbs up, well done. And then I'll give you another chance to say something else you liked about the game.
Yeah, I kind of touched on this, but I think that just this theme alone, like I know there's a lot of people, there's naysayers out there like, oh, fantasy's overdone, I don't like boring fantasy. I love fantasy. I love really kind of, in a way, people always say generic fantasy. I love that generic fantasy, quote unquote, like high fantasy,
cornball fantasy.
Yeah, like but it's done in a very charming way, and like it's not just too goofy or whimsical. It's like it's very grounded in that sense. But this setting, I feel like, is perfectly suited to me. Like it's just, I love how the characters are handled. I love the stories.
The art helps too.
Yeah, the art is incredible. Like I kind of
Mr. Cuddington.
Yeah, Mr. Cuddington, I believe is called, that couple that does art. I don't know their actual names. That's their art name, but yeah, everything about the theme, from the looks of it, the graphic design, it's all like woven together. I feel like it all captures that theme very well, visually, and through the storytelling and everything. And again, like the halflings are freaking awesome. So, and the fact that they added the small bodies, I'm really thrilled with that, because in the original game they didn't pitch it with like you could have shorter people, as all just everyone had the same height, because all the minis are.
Don't get into that. That's my next thing.
Okay. I was gonna say
I'm going to talk about miniatures.
Yeah, but like I'll keep mine short, because I really love the setting, and it's probably just a personal thing, because it's like that's my tone. That's the tone I want out of fantasy.
Yeah, so I could talk on and on about the components in the game, but I'm going to keep it specific to the miniatures, because it's not like a miniatures heavy game, but it is a feature of the game that it helps with the immersion, because I've been drawn to miniatures my whole life in gaming, so that's why I paint miniatures, is because I like the immersion of painted miniatures on the tabletop. And I typically stay away from pre-painted miniatures because they're usually not done very well. And these are far from perfect, but they are very well painted. They are pre-painted miniatures. And one thing to note about, Brady mentioned this, is there's a pack, like a tray of is it 6 classes in the game, right? So there's 6 different bodies, one for each path. So there's a path of light body, there's a path of shadow body, and then for every character in the game, and the character is like, again, the race. So there's human, elf, orc, dwarf, halfling, slin, fey, Faelish, Lunari, like the dark elf. And each of those has 2 versions, male and female heads. And so when you make a character, you take your miniature for your body for the class, and then you take the head for your character and you put it in there, and that's your miniature. And even though they're like, separate heads or whatever, you put them on, it looks pretty good. Like, it looks like a pretty good miniature, and also it feels unique. They also
and the bodies are very well done, where they're androgynous enough where they could be either
and they usually have gloves on and stuff in their hands, so you can't tell what like skin color they are. But they also added an expansion called the Small Bodies expansion, which is a little tuck box of just small bodies of all those things, so you can take any head and put it in a small body, mainly for the dwarf and the halfling.
Yeah, the Feelish specifically says it can be small or tall also.
And that wasn't in the Kickstarter originally, which was strange, because I would have thought really it was very silly to play a halfling.
I would have hated it. That would have really taken a lot of the wind out of the sail.
You honestly would. You weren't backing it until they added the small bodies, right?
Yeah, I think I was on the fence, and they added that. I'm like, okay, now, and that's how pathetic. That's how petty I am. That, like, I think that so much of what I love about this game is just because there's so much care put into like all the different audience members.
It's the details. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. This game is clearly done with care. It's not just like thrown together as in like, let's make a cool product that's going to hit this genre or whatever. It's like, no, this is a game where I'm going to make sure they're going to make sure that everything is done the way it should be done. But also on the miniatures side of things, there's not, like I said, not a ton of miniatures, but there are 2 sealed boxes in the game.
You keep saying that, but I think this is on par with most big box minis games. It's a lot of minis.
Yeah, there are a lot of minis, but I'm saying it's not like a miniatures focused game. Yeah. Like, they're there as pieces.
I'm saying if you like minis, you'll be satisfied. Yeah. There's a lot of minis.
But going off that, there's 2 boxes in the big box you get, and they are sealed boxes. There's a flap you open up, and it's basically what amounts to an Advent calendar. So there's like codes with punched out slots where it tells you throughout the game. We're going to talk about the quick start. So like the quick start guide there's videos of it online about like the tutorial. We'll talk about that because it's not very spoilery. They even talked about it in the Kickstarter, but we're not going to talk about the story stuff because that's a big focus of the fun of the game. But for example, in the quick start, you go up and your first combat is against a target dummy. And so it tells you in the book, go find this card. You pull out the card for the target dummy, and it has a code saying it's this figure 26 or whatever it is. You go to slot 26 on the miniature box, you pop it open, and you pull out this pre-painted miniature for that enemy. So like, you don't see these miniatures until you encounter them in the game, or unless you just go pop open all the things like,
and surprisingly, those things, the flaps you pop open to pull out, like they're like he mentioned before, the whole green legacy thing. These are very like resettable. Like there's a flap where you can like tuck it back in, and it's almost like it wasn't even open at all. So like you could like even reset it and have somebody else play, and they'd have the surprise factor as well.
Yeah, I'm genuinely looking forward to running through a new group through this game, and like treating it like a whole new experience, because it's kind of hard to. I've been playing board games for what, 30 years now or something, like a long time. Been into board games. But this is probably the most excited I've been about a game, and the most excited I've been thinking about like introducing other people to it. So it's a really cool experience. But the miniatures, I think, add a lot to that, because when you come across a fight of some monsters, and you pull out some pre-painted miniatures ready to go, that's pretty awesome. Like that adds to the immersion, and miniatures are a big thing I like about the game. So
yeah, and just like when you get into like, especially when you're first encountering things, like when you first encounter a new foe, it's like Christmas, like you're opening up all this stuff and you're revealing all these things. And I know that's why legacy games in general are very popular, but this is just the most effective one I've seen. It's just like really striking. And
we've played them from the beginning. Like we've played Pandemic Legacy or Risk Legacy, like all those early games.
And I won't undersell Pandemic Legacy. That was a magical experience as well. But this one is like just so far beyond into that. And again, it's probably a lot to do with the theme and how it's so catered to us as an audience, but it's just so well done.
It scratches the RPG itch that I have, where I don't necessarily want to play RPGs, but there's things about them that I like, and this does everything that I want out of an RPG.
Yeah.
The only complaint that I have, which we can talk about toward the end of this, rant we're doing, is knowing the content is limited. That's the only downside.
And that kind of goes into like, I guess, my next point, because one of the things I wanted to highlight, there's like all these different like showcases in this box of like the kind of the mechanical features, but I think one of the really cool ones I mean, you've seen this done before in different ways, but the card indexing system, where it has these 3 really nice card boxes in the game with dividers, and there's like chunks of foes, there's like travel events, there's just regular events, and
boxes with lids.
Yeah, they're actually like sturdy boxes, but so you have these 3 out, and they're constantly referred to during the game because you're keeping all those cards, all those characters, all those events are in those indexes. So you'll have active ones. Every group has active and inactive. So you'll have a bunch of active events, and when you resolve them, I won't say anything specifically, but like you'll resolve an event, it might say, okay, this goes to banish this card, or it becomes the other version of it, and you replace that card, you put that in inactive, you put the inactive one in active, and now you have a new version of that event to encounter. So like when you're going to, let's say, a new tile you uncover, which tiles themselves could be a whole different topic to talk about, but they'll have number codes on the tiles, like spaces. You might have a character that's printed on a tile.
Let's say you go to a hex on the world map that says medium 12. You go and find that map tile in the medium map tiles of 12. You read the back of it to set the stage. You put it down, and then you see what's on the map tile.
Yeah, one of the things you might see is a purple exclamation point. It says like event 21 or something. So you put a token on that on the board. So the token indicates that this hasn't been resolved yet. There's also other things like you might see a POI, which is something you can just look. It's a point of interest, or an NPC. So you can, when you're doing a story mode, your exploration
or
mode,
other tile codes.
Yeah, other tile codes to expand the map. But like when you're doing your adventure mode, you have just general actions you can do. You can like explore to reveal new tiles. You can interact with one of those codes, either like events or a POI or an NPC, or you can use whatever abilities you want, like heal each other and stuff. But it's really cool because it's not structured in a sense where you have to like take turns. You're all just doing things simultaneously. You place your miniatures on the map. You still have to abide by movement, because like you can't just like teleport across a lake or something if there's like movement preventing abilities on the board. You got to actually follow those things, but you don't have to like count your spaces and stuff. So let's say, for example, you're in a 2-lane, what do you call that, 2-grid hallway. There's only space for two spaces, but there's an event in the middle of that hallway. Before you resolve that and go past it, you have to like align your characters and say where you guys are before we resolve this, because something might happen.
That's another important thing. Is like when the active player, anybody can be an active player when you're adventuring, but someone says, I'm going to go encounter this token. That player becomes the active player, and everybody else can decide where they're going to be. They can position their characters wherever they want before resolving that. So usually, like if you're going to explore, you might all group up to the edge and be like, okay, let's go explore together.
Yeah. So these card indexes are essentially your GM. Like they're going to be the things that spit out all the characters and events that happen to you. And I just really like how it's handled, because first off, I like cards. Cards are just like fun to handle. Like I like books too, but it's just nice having these cards that are all sorted out and with dividers. So I think it's really well done, and it helps that the cards are just really beautiful, really well designed. Graphic design is awesome.
On that topic too, one of the coolest things about that index system is that it introduces new mechanics to the game as well. Like in our session last night, we were playing. That told us to go draw some card, and the card was actually a rules reference for a whole new mechanic. And then you go punch out this spot for some tokens, and it's like, oh, this is a whole new thing in the game. So it's another way to introduce new content. And it's awesome. And
in that regard too, on the card topic, almost all the cards have backs that have FAQs on them. So if you have any like foes you're fighting, and if you have some kind of rule you're not sure about, you flip it over, and usually it's answered on the FAQs, which is like I haven't seen that done in any game. Just having like a built-in FAQ system, it's really cool. But
every card has an FAQ system.
Yeah, and that's the example you just used is one that like the new rule came through an FAQ, because like you see an icon on this card, you're like, what is that? So you flip it over, and the FAQ says open this box. So it's like it naturally introduces this new thing without even checking the rules or anything. It's just really cool. And then the other big one too is the keys. there's a card type called keys, and those are usually they can be actual things or just like, keywords that you need to remember or phrases. So like if you overhear some NPCs say a passcode to get into a door, which is a total hypothetical example I made, you might get a key for that, and you'll put that in your party inventory, and it'll have a little phrase on the top of the card that says, when you hear this word said, when in any conversation throughout the game, you pull that key out and it might trigger some new event. So it's like hidden information. So that's a really, really cool way to keep everyone engaged in conversations.
They even designed it really handily where the keys, if you flip them upside down, there's a little summary of the card text that you're looking for. So for example, if you find some key that says you're looking for a man with a white shirt, you turn the key upside down and it'll say man with a white shirt there. So you can kind of keep your keys all in a stack in your party inventory, so you can easily see if you come across a card that has that specific text on it, oh, this is related to a key that we have. Let's see how this is resolved.
That's mine. Is the card? That's a long point, but the card indexing is fabulous.
There were things about the card index that I pointed out, but I think it's too spoilery, so I'm not going to even.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is a lot of the really cool features of the game are things that pop up through actual exploration and exploring. There's things you can't really explain, except for the fact they say, "Hey, you can trust us. This is great."
Yeah, there's a job deck in the game, and you can go pick up jobs from towns, but you constantly are adding job cards to the deck. So as you're discovering things in the world, you're finding new things to do in the world, and the jobs are ways for you to just go get money and give you something to do out in the world.
This is probably a way to not spoil it, is like usually whenever you encounter a new foe you haven't seen before through the story, like almost every time I've seen at least, where you get that new foe, you'll always get a job to hunt that type of foe. So you can, like, if you liked fighting that type of enemy, you can go take a job and just go look for them and fight them again.
Yeah. So for example, if you came across, I'm trying to think of like a gorilla or something silly. Slugs. If you came across slugs or something, like, these miniatures are cool, probably not gonna see them again because they're, the story, whatever, but like you might your characters know about those things, and now you can go, there's a job card to go hunt those things, so you can fight them again if you want, which is pretty cool.
The economy in the game, like, this is a small point. It's like right now with what I've seen of the game so far, the economy is a little limited in like a good way, because it's not like you're just getting tons of gold. Like, getting 1 gold feels really cool, and mostly you're just using gold to either resupply or repair your gear, repair your armor. But you're like not really buying a lot of new stuff. You're not like buying usually finding equipment. You can buy some, but
we came across that situation where gold kind of progressed.
Yeah, we're really short on money right now.
So sometimes gold is important. But again, the job thing leads to my point is one of the features I like, how he handles or how the game handles with the world map. So like the game starts off, you have this little world map section with a bunch of face down hexes, but it's like a triple layer punch board. And the middle layer has like holes with like thumb indentations, so like
it's like half a hex.
Yeah, so you can push in the face down hex to one side and pull out that hex to flip it over. So when you're exploring the map, you actually flip the hexes over and you see what's on the hex. You start off, again, it's not really spoiler because it's part of the setup of the game. You start off in this guild. What do they call it?
The guild camp, I think.
Guild camp, yeah. And that's the first location where you start the campaign. And so one of the first steps of setup is you flip that over and you put your party marker there, and there you are. And what I like is that I've played a lot of games with world travel, like, going back to like Warhammer Quest and stuff with like, overland travel. I like the way this handles it because everything just seems so smooth, like the transition. There's no like hard transition between things.
It's not like phases. You're just like, if you go from adventure to combat, it's because of like some exploration you did.
Some card you drew told you were fighting something, and it's like you don't have to like reset the game. Like, oh, let's put these things away, get these things out. It's a very smooth flow.
Yeah, it's not procedural in the sense where it's like, all right, here's the travel phase. Okay, now here's the exploration phase. It's more just, okay, we're traveling. Oh, now we have to fight combat. So it's just very natural. It's like a D&D campaign.
To give an example of the quick start, it tells you to put your party marker on the guild camp, and on the guild camp hex, one of the things it says is there's a POI maybe, but there's also big 1 or big 0. So it says take out big 0, and if you want to go into that hex, you go to big 0. So you pull out the big 0 map tile, you read the back and the description about what it is, put it face up on the table, put your miniatures on it, where it tells you, and you're there. And now you can just go and explore the tile. And in this case, you're at the guild camp, and you can go talk to people.
And one thing I've noticed too about that example is like, because we've played a lot of fantasy MMOs or RPGs and stuff, and like you always had that feeling when you get to like a town or something, everyone kind of breaks off and does their own thing. It always feels that way when you're playing this now, where everyone sees the map and you see all these different POIs or NPCs, and everyone just naturally just moves their miniature where they want to go, and it just feels like you're playing a video game in a way. But it's like it's just a free form board game. It's so unique. I haven't seen that done before.
Yeah, and that this also ties in with the whole job system, where like you go to different places to pick up, mostly of towns. You go to a town to even one of the actions you can do in town is you can go to the job board and pick a job. Your party can have one active job at a time. And there's different types of jobs, like there's hunting, and one of the ones that we just did recently was a cart one where you deliver goods from one town to another. It was one of the coolest things we've encountered in the game so far. So I'm not going to.
And you mentioned a spoiler. It's in the rule book. It's not really a spoiler. It's like a core mechanic that's written in the rule book. If somebody reads the rules, they'll see how the carton thing works. So,
really? I don't remember seeing that anywhere.
I had to do it. I had to double check it when I was doing because the job types, when it breaks down the cards, it explains you how to do those.
Oh, okay. Well, it's if you're like me and you discover that, I'm going to let you discover that. But there's actually like mechanics for the cart. Like you are actually delivering this cart from one town to another, and it's going through events and stuff. It's awesome. It was so cool to play through that because it was like an RPG. Because it wasn't the common like, okay, dungeon crawl, combat, whatever. It's like, okay, we're still using our miniatures and actually doing things in the game, but it's in a different way. Very cool.
Very charming.
But like the world map is done very, very well, and I would say it's one of the bigger selling points. And I have one more, but I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, I think the other one that jumps out to me is I didn't expect to like it this much because I remember seeing it on the because like I didn't back this game for the combat. Like it wasn't like, oh, this looks like a great fighting game, but it did look like had some cool things added, and I think the damage system is pretty unique. So it's like not something that I would highlight as something I love, but it's something I appreciate because I haven't seen it done before. So there's like when you have a combat, the enemies will have these face-up cards with their artwork, and different pieces of their artwork is called out with these little like circles, and they're always in a grid shape. So like you have horizontal or vertical lines that can go through these damage points. So when you're doing all the weapons in the game have damage grids, damage patterns. So they're coming directionally, either diagonally up and over, or like they're coming in vertically. So like wherever your damage is coming from, it's going to determine where you can hit this enemy. And some enemies have critical hits that, like, if you cross over a critical hit, it can hit another point in the damage grid. So it's very hard to explain, and it was hard for me to get my head around when I read the rules because it's just so new. I haven't seen that done before, but I think it's pretty unique and it's worth mentioning because it's fun to mess around with when you're trying to find the right way damage paths.
Yeah, I'll admit, seeing that, I was not excited about that at all, and also learning it, I was like, this is more confusing than it needs to be. But when you actually start playing it, it's pretty straightforward. It's actually kind of intuitive, but I think it's going to be a struggle when you're getting new people into a game, trying to explain that to them. And this kind of goes into my next point. Is that your whole point?
Yeah, okay. I wanted to bring it up. Yeah.
So one of my points is going to be the way that the game handles introducing you to the game, like the quick start guide. So it's recommended when you get this game out to not even bother with the rule book, to just grab the quick start guide and start playing from there. This quick start guide is so detailed, and it gets you set up and playing the game step by step. Basically, you're just playing through what it's telling you. It's set up in a way that you're not making choices. You're kind of just going through the motions of what it tells you to do, but it teaches you everything as you're doing it in a way that I've never experienced in a game before. It's just so it's scripted, but it's a great way to like learn the game together. Like the group is learning the game at the same time, so you don't have to. Nobody's explaining things to people. It's great until you get to combat. That's a whole separate thing. But the quick start guide is done very well. Part of the quick start guide is when you're at guild camp, one of the NPCs you talk to tells you, "Hey, go hit that training dummy, to test out your stuff." The quick start guide tells you to pause the game, and there are 6 combat examples.
Oh yeah, the combat.
There are 6 path combat examples included in the game, and these are like 4-page spreads, folded up sheets that are the same size as rule books or whatever, that for each class. And this is like a whole example combat of everything this class does. So it's like it basically walks you through what you would do in combat as this class. Like, for example, as a cleric, it tells you how to swing your staff to hit people, to use your bandages to heal, use your focus to help reroll. all these things that teach you the class. So it tells you to do that. Now, it's awesome, but I don't think it's the best way to learn combat. I think combat is more of a, it's okay to like, just do it.
Yeah,
I think jump right straight into it.
I think they provided that as like for maybe some like hardcore gamers that want to do it on their own and not be told, because they also included, because like you're doing this combat on this little map tile, but they also included 3 additional copies of that map tile and 3 additional copies of the foe card. That way everyone can just kind of like go off and do their own little combat examples, which is cool, but I don't think a ton of like new players are going to do that. They probably just want to be guided through it.
That's probably the only thing I did not recommend we do. Well, I said we should play through the quick start guide as it's written, like we should just go along and learn this together. I didn't think that was good because I don't think it's great, the best way for some people to learn. Like for example, with my wife, I think she feels like she would have to read every single word of that to like understand. She wants to know everything, and I'm like, you don't need to know everything. Let's just get through this combat and we'll learn as we go. I think besides the combat though, like after we played the quick start guide, I didn't have to look at the rules. Like we could just start playing because it taught you pretty much the game.
Yeah.
There are some icons and stuff to learn for combat that you might have to go reference some details for. But other than that, like the quick start guide, it's the first time the quick start guide is actually like does what it's supposed to do in my mind. You don't need to read the rules to play this game. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I got hung up on for the combat was just the damage, because like it's just because it's a new way to do it. It's like because you see a lot of things reused in games, so you can iterate on stuff in your head and okay, this is kind of like this game, but this was just such a new way to do damage. I just didn't know how to I had no frame of reference to build on, so that was one thing that hung me up. Because like other than that, the game is not like very mechanically heavy. It's mostly, as long as you understand the transitions between like what you can do in adventure mode versus what you do in combat, and obviously combat's going to be the more rules heavy part, because it's you have to take turns and you have the enemy AI. So those are the 2 biggest pieces, is damage and enemy AI. Everything else is kind of just like, as long as you know the guidelines, you just start playing and go through the story. It just guides you very well through it.
Yeah, so that was probably my last thing I want to focus on, because a lot of things I want to talk about is more spoiler stuff, which I can't really get into. So did you have anything else you wanted to highlight before we talk about our final thoughts?
I think just like the other thing is kind of maybe just more in the componentry, because like how everything's designed, because it packs up so well. Like when you save the game, like it's just there's very minor things you won't think about, because like you said before, you have those 3 boards that sit into a sleeve, and that's your character, but they sit flat. So like when you're playing, you have cubes placed everywhere, and you're tracking how much damage your armor has, or how many sandwiches you have in your knapsacks. So like a lot of those cubes, it'd be hard to store, obviously, but they have this thing where you flip, I'll use a knapsack, for example. I'm a halfling, so I have a lot of food in my knapsack, and you have 2 cubes in there, and the cubes are just my colored cubes for my path, so they're going to be in my tuck box when I store them. But to mark that I have those, you flip the token of the knapsack over, and on the sides there's a 1 and a 2, so you can say like, okay, I'll rotate this so I know that the 2s face up, so I know I have 2 sandwiches in that knapsack. So very, very cool, clever way to like store everything neatly. So that kind of goes back into just the overall production of the game. It's just, I mean, you're paying $250, but you're getting like one of the best products I've ever seen on the tabletop. It's just insane.
Yeah, they definitely had storage in mind with designing this product, because it is designed, it's a big game, like there's a lot of stuff going on, but you can pack it all up mid-campaign without even writing anything down. You don't need to mark anything in this game.
Yeah, we were worried about the cards, the hero cards. They have a level up grid on the back where in the rule book they say, use a pencil and just check your level boxes, and then you can erase them later. I hate that. I'm never going to do that. But you don't have to. Like, you can track it all. As long as you don't mess your board up, you can track it all just fine.
Because like when you level up, you can pick one upgrade. So like you can upgrade your health, mana, or stamina. You have to choose one. But your board tracks your max, so your board will tell you what you picked. So unless your board flips upside down and you don't know where things are, you don't need to write anything down. Like, as long as you keep your board, and honestly, everything is indented too, so it's like it's hard to mess up your board.
And honestly, like, even if you mess it up, you could probably remember the choices you made, and if you don't, it's like, it's not going to change the game that much. If you leveled up your magic.
just level up again and make whatever choices
because
you
there's
want.
rules in the book about how to have somebody drop in and drop out. So if you have someone join your game that's already, your campaign's already in progress, they just level up step by step up to your level, so you can do the same thing if you mess up your level. So don't mark up your cards.
Yeah, I should also mention that there are things we haven't even obviously we haven't finished the campaign yet. Brady's playing 2 campaigns right now, one with our wives and then one with his daughter, because he has his own copy of the game. we're playing my copy with our wives, and we're like what, level 3?
I think we just
we're working towards level 4. You can get up to level 10 in the game. So that's a rough idea how long the campaign is.
But it's tough because the XP cost gets so much bigger like toward the end. So like I think we're level 5 in my game with Riley, but like we still need like 20 experience to get to level 6.
Yeah. But there are obviously we haven't played all the content, but there are 2 boxes in the box that haven't even opened yet. Like because there's a sealed dossier, like a slipcase of like hidden tokens, face down tokens that sometime the game will tell you to punch them out because maybe something changed, maybe you unlocked something. But there's also 2 sealed boxes. I don't know, no idea what's in there. They're just sealed content. So
they're awesome.
It could be anything. Brady is already ahead of that. So
I've opened everything except for like all the foes. Obviously, I haven't gone through all the foes yet. But
you're one of those people that just
I didn't open them. We were playing. The game told us to open them. I'm just saying we played that far ahead that I know what's in there. But it's all great. It's all no disappointments at all. It's been awesome.
So now we can talk about so we have all these points of things we love about the game. Like overall, we both love the game. Like it's fantastic. There are a couple of concerns I have with the game that we can talk about. I don't think there's anything really negative to say about the game. One thing I wanted to point out about combat is that the game does use D20s for like skill checks, like a role playing game would. It's really just a D20 plus your modifier for a target number. But the cool thing is about combat is like, for example, my staff, it has the thresholds I need to hit to like do damage. So there's like the basic staff you start with has one low threshold for 1 damage and a higher threshold for 2 damage, but the low one is 2+. So unless you roll a 1, like you're going to do damage, which is cool. Like it's random, but it's not like, oh, I rolled an 8 and I missed.
And it feels relatively balanced, like because the enemies have a lot of the damage markers and like there's armor to deal with and stuff too. So it's like doing 1 damage kind of sucks, but at least you're doing something.
Yeah. So like you usually in the game, aside from like general skill checks out in events and stuff like that, if you're in combat, you have to roll a 1 to miss usually.
Which I've done plenty of times.
Yeah. Anyway, so concerns. While I'm playing this game, as much fun as I'm having with it, and like I keep wanting to play it, like we have like multiple hour long sessions playing, and then when one of our wives gets tired, like we get mad, like we don't keep playing. But it's a weird balance because I want to play a bunch of it, but I also am worried about playing through it too fast because I don't want it to end. Because I know that this box, it can be replayed, obviously, but it's designed to be like, it's a story. So you play through it and you know everything, and you want to do a new story. So my concern is that I wish this game was like how D&D supports their product with like these modules. Like I want this game to have 2 modules put out a year that I can play through, because this would be the only game I would ever play.
or at least have a dungeon mode or something. It's more like kind of like a roguelike version or something.
That honestly, that would probably satisfy me. But like I feel like this game would have been awesome if they separated it into like the core componentry you need for every campaign, and then like this story would be a separate box, and that was like a module, and then going forward knowing that we're going to just do new modules, and that would be an awesome product model. Like I'm already going to recommend this game to anybody. Like this game, hands down, if you like fantasy, RPG like board games, get this, no questions asked. Like I would recommend this to anybody. It's fantastic. But if it was something where they had like a plan for a roadmap or something in the game with like some kind of a replayability format or just more campaigns, this game would be unstoppable. Like this would be the only game I would ever play on the tabletop.
Yeah, I think really all it needs, because I do think that the current format, if they plan on doing another box of the same size, kind of like if you look at like Gloomhaven versus Frosthaven, it's kind of the same thing where there's certain things you can interchange between the two, like the heroes and stuff, but ideally it's like, here's a new box to experience. It's very similar to the old one. Like if they're planning on doing that, they should at least have a plan where they're going to have some sort of like release a box that's like a dungeon. Here's a dungeon you can go through. It's got tons of levels you go through, but it's like meant to be a modular experience where you can just take whatever heroes you have in the Arydia line and go fight a random dungeon or something.
Yeah, we're playing Heroes of Hammerwatch 2 right now, which we'll talk about maybe if we have time. But
we're coming up on 54 minutes right now.
Something like that would be really awesome, where like you have this really like really run downtown and you're heroes and you're going to go adventuring and like get resources to like rebuild this town. That would be an awesome way to do it. Cause
and the game supports that. Like I won't get into spoilers obviously, but with that board, the basin you start with, you have that mechanic where you can flip over those tiles, you explore, but because they're removable, you could just socket out new ones. So if you had like a area that was undeveloped and you're like heroes going out trying to develop something and you're trying to get money to build new things, like that's a whole other game in itself, but it would exist in that same mechanical system, you know? So there's tons you can do to expand the game or add new playable, modes.
Well, this is also the first game where I'm not like, add more classes and races. I don't care about that. Just add more content.
I want to play the same two. I want to play the Path of Wandering and Path of Shadow just in tons of different adventures.
I think adding new characters would be cool, like different elves or different, that could be because the characters in the game have stories behind them. So like that'd be cool to add new of those because like every elf has the same background.
Yeah,
like every halfling has the same background.
Yeah, we didn't touch on that, but like you do have these cool, like sometimes you play a D&D campaign and the GM will give you like a secret or something. That builds this, that has this in there too, where like when you start a character, you'll have a secret card that's kind of like your backstory, but it's tied to whatever type of character you chose, either dwarf or halfling or elf, which is really cool, but you could add more of those. You could add different versions of those keys, so it'd be just a whole other side story. So,
but they're also tied to the story. Like that's the other thing. There's so much stuff tied to this specific story, it seems like.
Or the region, because the region is the story in a way, like because
it's all tied together. That's what I'm saying. Like the whole story is tied. Like all the content in this game seems to be tied together, which makes for like a very immersive experience. But also the
complicates expansion.
The game designer in me is thinking like, okay, well, I want more of a sandbox. Like, I don't want to change this game at all. Like, I don't want to change the experience I had. I just want to know that I can keep playing it going forward.
Well, if you think about it, like I won't go into depth, but like if you think about it, all those different like A, B, C versions of cards, they could release new ones, and that would completely change everything. It would have new paths and stuff.
Definitely
so it's like that's all, and it's possible because like all the map tiles also are thin card stock where they could just swap. We didn't talk about the map tiles too much, but that's another topic. It's really cool, but
that's good point.
But I mean that's the only component downside is because I love those, but they're also kind of hard to use because they kind of sit like at an angle, like warped up.
Let's mention that real quick because you talked about the index system, which the map tiles are very similar to that. There are 4 different sizes of map tiles in the game. There's big, small, medium, and long. And of those types, there are their own slipcases with dividers. So you have active and inactive tiles, and they're all face down. But as you explore the world, you might say pull out Big Zero, which is the guild camp. You pull that out, it's face up now, so you know what that is, and you can always come back to it if you want. But sometimes those map tiles change, and so like maybe the guild camp burns down and it says get big 2, so big zero becomes
A or B.
Big zero A becomes big zero B, and you put A in the inactive side and you pull out B, and now you have a burned down camp map tile.
Now on that point too, you can have the possibilities now too where you have that big map tile, but it might say an event happens and it says draw small 9, and you draw that up, and it's like it's a piece of that map, and it replaces. Yeah. So like now this wagon's burned down.
That happens a lot in the game too, where the little map tiles come out and put on top of the big map tiles. Now I should mention the map tiles are thin cardstock because there's so many of them in the game. Like the game has tons of them, and the art on them is fantastic. Like it looks great. You put the painted miniatures on this map tiles, it looks beautiful on the table.
So immersive.
But the downside is they are thin map tiles that are prone to warping. Like all of them are warped.
Which
does suck.
Yeah, I used to mind that from just a visual aspect, but this I don't mind. It affects the playability because the minis are lightweight, and sometimes they'll like I have that in combat encounter. The cat step on the table. If they step on that mat, it just throws everything off the mat, and it just messes everything.
And they also if they warp up, they spin. Yeah. They don't lay flat. So while it'd be awesome to have like thick cards, punch board or whatever, it would take up way too much space. Yeah. Like that's one of the drawbacks of like Shadows Brimstone, things like that, where there's just map tiles take up so much space.
I didn't think of this. This is a big a big fix, but having like a piece of glass flattening that down, that'd be a good way to counter that.
Yeah, I mean if you want to do that when you play.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean I don't think I'd go that far, but I just thought that'd be a good way to like keep it all solid. Yeah. And I would go to that length for this game. So
I mean you don't need a big piece of glass because
not big, aren't that big. Just like a little pane.
But and that could be a solution. But that's another point that it's good and bad. It's good because the variety is fantastic and the way that they work is great, but I don't think you can get cardstock that thin to not warp. Yeah. it is what it is. So
yeah, so that's Arydia. That's a great little game, a great little gem to add to your collection.
Yeah, it is available for pre-order, I believe, on Far Off Games website for like $240 USD. I couldn't recommend it enough for anybody who's into that kind of game. I had somebody mention on when I posted about it on Facebook or whatever, someone's like, yeah, I've been kind of sick of dungeon crawls. This is not a dungeon crawl. No. Like it might look like it, but it's not.
It's very much a role-playing board game. Yeah. I know that's like a holy grail of board games trying to like cross that like hybrid RPG board game thing. This is the closest thing you can possibly get, I think, to an actual like cooperative role-playing experience with components and everything. So it's
I think the only thing it's missing is like a player's handbook or something that has detailed information about stuff, and also like endless modules.
Yeah.
There's no way to like improvise things. You're playing through a fixed story, so it's not like you can't really affect the story in that way where it's like I'm going to go off the rails and change things up. That's where the role-playing games will always be unique in that respect. But this, if you just want to experience what it's some type of D&D type RPG experience without any kind of prep work, this is the closest thing you can get, I think, with beautiful components, like a great product.
And we did have, and that's what we have. We could talk about Hammerwatch 2 if you want a little bit, but
Hemorrhoid
Cream 2, Hammerwatch 2.
We're been playing a lot of Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. That's pretty much. I mean, if you haven't played Heroes of Hammerwatch 2, it's like $15 or something on Steam. Get it. It's one of the most fun roguelike little hack and slash games ever. It's awesome.
Yeah, I was a little slow to get into it just because like the graphics is not my style, my preferred style. It's very retro, like pixely.
It's pixel graphics,
which I mean, I like that usually, but this one's just something about it makes it hard for me to see things happening. So
it's zoomed out, so you're pretty small because they want to, you want to see a lot of the map, lots of monsters and stuff. So the downside is it's pretty zoomed out, and when pixels are zoomed out, they're hard to see things. So
it's cute though. The gameplay cycle of like building up a town, going out for supply runs, and just going adventuring it's fun. I want to see that done more with different types of games because I love that looting cycle where you just go out on adventures and loot.
It's pleasant grinding. Like it's grinding, but it's grinding you want to do
because you're always getting something out of it. You're always improving.
You're leveling up your town, your classes you're playing as. Every class you play as adds to your guild. Like all your heroes are part of a guild in your personal account, and so every hero you level up will have a passive buff he gives other heroes. For example, my paladin gives armor for every level he is to all my other heroes. So the more heroes you have leveled up, the more powerful you are. You can go further in the dungeons, and it's a cool cycle. It's very fun.
And we had a listener question, right, about like I think it was.
I can pull it up right now. I know there was a question about when our next episode was going to be.
There was one I thought of. It was like, what is your favorite class?
We have too many. We have too many channels. Yeah. What's your favorite dinosaur?
Dinosaur. That's it. Ankylosaurus.
And also more controversial. I'll say my favorite as a child was a brontosaurus, but also I like the Did you say ankylosaurus?
That was always my favorite as a kid.
I think brontosaurus because I had. What are those things called? Dino Riders?
Yeah, Dino Riders.
I got those for my birthday one year, and I got the brontosaurus, which was like the big one with these guys riding on the side of them on these little robotic seats. It was such a cool toy. But anyway. Brady, who is the best Robin? Adam, even if you agree with Brady, since I already know his answer, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I don't care what your answer is. I already know who I'm going to say.
That's a loaded question, but who's my favorite Robin?
Well, should I say it first so I'm not tainted by your opinion? I would say Dick Grayson is the best Robin.
Why?
Because he's the one I know. He was the one that was in Batman the Animated Series. That's why.
Yeah, the thing is that's the thing. Here's a fun fact is that was actually Tim Drake, but it was a miscommunication because the people who were writing for that did not understand that the description being given was the Tim Drake Robin, but they only knew Dick Grayson because they had limited knowledge of the current, universe, because that came out when Tim Drake was the Robin, so they based that character on the comics version of Tim Drake without knowing, this is actually Dick Grayson.
Tim Drake was a college student that fell in love with Batgirl.
Yeah that's different. That's all different. Anyway, the best Robin, my favorite Robin is Tim Drake because he was the one that established the Robin like major 1990s continuity. He like if you go back and look at sales when the Robin comic book started, the Robin solo series with Tim Drake, that was the best comic book series, like the best selling comic book series of all time. Like that was breaking all kinds of records. It was amazing. So like he really set the standard for what the Robin character became, because Dick Grayson in most reality is just he's Nightwing. His history was he was the first Robin, but like in all honesty, he didn't really have as much built into the comics lore as Tim Drake. So Tim Drake's more relevant, I think. But also, it's just I like the storylines. I like Chuck Dixon as a writer. He did some great Robin's storylines. So he's always been my favorite.
Chuck Dixon and Dick Grayson.
Yeah, he did. That's why he wrote Tim Drake, because he's too close.
I would always remember Dick Grayson because of Batman the Animated Series and the Adventures of Batman and Robin. I remember when that show first came out. I think that was the one and only time we actually ever hugged each other as kids, because we were so excited that they had a show called Batman and Robin.
I don't remember hugging over that.
You don't remember that?
No. Did I block it out?
I don't know. I was remember laying on the floor watching it. We were watching it, and like it was a joke or something. Like, oh my god! Like, I don't know if we were just like teasing each other or something, but like. I remember being so excited because we raced home from school and put a VHS in to tape every episode, and then we taped over it.
But I thought when they did that though, like they only periodically like used that title screen. Like it
got into syndication, it like looped in, but like
I remember that. Yeah.
I remember we would watch it, and then the one time that it was, you could tell by the title screen, it's like The Adventures of Batman and Robin. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a good episode. But
I forget. Yeah, block that one out. Anyway, yeah, Dick Grayson, go for it. Go for it.
That's it. I think that's everything.
Yeah, we talk about what we've been watching, but we've been going on for an hour, and we've been just playing Arydia, so we'll watch stuff later.
Maybe we could start a Twitch channel where we just play through an Arydia campaign for people who don't want to buy it.
Yeah, if you want to see the spoilers, we'll spoil it for you. We'll spoil it.
I wonder if there's an audience for that. People who just don't want to buy it, but they just want to watch it.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. There's an audience for everything.
Chime in if that's something that appeals to you, because don't think I would like that, but.
You don't think you're like doing it, or
I don't think I would like watching that. I think I would want to just buy it and do it myself. But
I watched Last of Us being played because I don't want to buy a PlayStation 2. You know.
Oh, I will say though, that's the other thing about Arydia is if you want to play a RPG in your solo, it feels like this is like the best thing you could do.
Yeah, like the only thing you lose solo is you don't have that fun like role playing thing with the characters. You could if you wanted to, but like having somebody read the character, it's a very unique part of that game.
Just turn on Siri and say, Siri, can you walk through this with?
All right, we'll let you guys go and go buy Arydia and make the game line very successful so they make lots of expansions.
And if you did get it, let us know what you think or what your favorite parts about it are.
Check you later.
See ya.